Namaste, I'm Diksha Yadav, your host for What This Means, a Swarajya podcast show where we discuss news behind the news. We have today a very special guest with us, Ajay Rotti. He's a tax expert and also the founder and CEO of Tax Compass. Namaste, Ajay ji, and welcome
Namaste.
to the podcast.
Thank you.
Ajay ji, this is our second episode in the Budget 2025 series. First one we did with the with Professor Prasanna Tantri ji.
Right.
And so I'll start with you, like with you also with the same question, and that is, what are your key expectations for this budget, and also like what would be your top two or top three things that you would like to see in the budget?
Right. So I think that's the context of who is expecting is most important.
Yeah.
What are the expectations in the budget? Because the expectations from the budget will be different depending on where you're looking at
Hmm.
it. Uh, I've been advising large businesses and companies on taxation, so a lot of my expectations would come from that perspective
Yeah.
in terms of whether it's ease of doing business or any of that. So, key expectations, I think, sorry, largely would be the tax rates, at least for the companies, have been stable.
Hmm.
They have not been doing too many tinkling. The tax holidays have been phased out, so therefore, a lot of the complexities, a lot of the issues are behind us. I think the stability and certainty in that continuing is one of the most important things. But what has not been addressed, which is what I
Hmm.
think needs to be done, is on administration and litigation. I think businesses, the largest issue that they have today
Yeah.
is really the tax litigation and uncertainty in the way tax administration functions. That's first. Second, from a more larger thing, again, it's equally important for the business and for public in general for very different reasons. I think is some bit of rationalization and some bit of changes in the slabs for individual taxpayers. Now,
Right.
uh, I don't think personally I am not an advocate of increasing the minimum amount not chargeable to tax. I think
Hmm.
it's quite high already when compared to our per capita income, etc. But I think we have a good scope to widen the slabs. So when I
Okay.
say this, today you have the 20% slab that kicks in at a particular number and then goes on for 3 4 lakh rupees, and then you get
Yes.
into a 30% slab. I think that can be widened to say that 30% kicks in only at about 30 lakhs or thereabouts.
Right.
And 20% applies for a much larger slab than 5 lakh rupees. I
Hmm.
think that's one thing which gives relief
Hmm.
uh, to the uh, you know taxpayers. At the same time, doesn't really shrink our base. I think
Right.
increasing the base is extremely important.
Hmm.
That is also good for businesses because there's more money, disposable money in hands of individuals,
Right.
so then there is going to be spending and that will boost consumption. I think some bit of relaxation on personal taxes, looking at tax litigation and kickstarting that whole process of, because that's not something that the FM can solve in one budget,
Right.
as to what needs to be done. Third and last is a little bit more on, there are procedural issues, tech teething problems in terms of both GST and income tax. It's been
Hmm.
improving, but I think some bit of looking at that aspect, because that has caused a lot of problems on ease of doing business. Compliance is becoming difficult.
Hmm.
Notices which come because some two numbers don't tally, which are really system generated and things like that.
Yeah.
You ask, even individuals are getting those kind of
Hmm.
notices. Somewhere, sorry, two and three are linked. Looking at the administration, looking at ease of doing business will be a key thing.
Right. Talking about ease of doing business, we keep seeing all over social media also, like though situation has like better in this, Modi government or BJP government compared to before, but the issues of bribes and delays are still there, which we see constant uh, criticism about. So, what would you say that what part is the judiciary responsible for such cases? In delays on the part of the judiciary, and where is the loophole? What changes can be made to fast track these cases when it comes to ease of doing business?
Yeah, so that's, I think, a very good question, because from tax, the litigation is really one of the biggest pain points.
Hmm.
especially for overseas companies, investors, and even large corporations for that matter, is really the time it takes for the tax disputes to settle.
Hmm.
Uh, Having done this for over 20 years now, I know there are matters which have been sort of going on for 15, 20 years, literally, at various levels. So you don't
Hmm.
get certainty, you don't get closure on tax litigation for long. I think there are multiple aspects at play. You did ask me about judiciary. I think judiciary, some of it is, there's so much backlog
Hmm.
of cases that anything that we file today for it to even come up takes a few years.
Oh.
And there is a shortage of staff at the tax tribunal. There are no specialized benches for tax. You know, people who've done tax, people who understand tax, etc. Therefore, at the higher levels, both High Court, Supreme Court, tax matter take a lot of time because of basic understanding,
Hmm.
amount taken to argue, etc. So those
But
are things which can be addressed.
what about, like, we see in certain type of cases now government has been more proactive and announced like there should be a deadline that in 1 month it should be solved, or 1 week, or things like that. So that kind of changes cannot be done in this area.
It can be done, and in fact, the tax laws have a timeline for disposal for the first and the second appellate authority, but they don't really adhere to that because that's not a mandatory deadline. That's sort of indicative in that sense and
Hmm.
recommendatory. Now, the larger problem in tax is really the first appellate authority, which is within the income tax department. You finish that and then you go to the tribunal and then the courts. There's a lot of pendency there. That is something that can definitely be addressed by the FM in the budget. Last budget, she did announce an additional, appellate mechanism for smaller cases.
Hmm.
She also announced a settlement scheme where you could go and settle your dispute, which have been there for long, etc. I
Yes.
think having some of those to clean up some of the backlog, because a lot of the litigation, if you fought for amounts of taxes for 10, 15, 20 years,
Hmm.
given the effect of inflation, you are sometimes fighting for very small numbers because it's a 15-year-old matter.
Yeah.
And you're fighting for principles and issues that are there, and both sides are just, they keep on fighting. But in terms of at the judiciary, I think there the blame is both for the taxpayer and the uh, income tax department or the government department, whichever is litigating, because both seek adjournments. It's not that it's only the government which is delaying things.
Right.
I think having deadlines, like you mentioned, to say if appeals have to be disposed and heard within a particular period of time
Yeah.
will help at least cut down the time taken for litigation. That's
Hmm.
number one. Second is the tax litigation is one of the largest number of litigations because there are really very, very frivolous, aggressive orders passed which forces the taxpayers to go on litigation.
Hmm.
Uh, a lot of our tax issues that are picked up are not fundamentally on a point of neat reading of the law or anything. For example, there's so much talk about this whole popcorn
Yeah.
taxation with GST. Absolutely misunderstood in terms of what the real issue is. But that's really symptom of a lot of the things. The whole need for the clarification, and it was indeed a clarification, it was not a new tax that was brought in,
Yeah.
was because of different positions that different officers took on reading of the popcorn
Hmm.
rate. Now, for something like this, I really don't think somebody has to litigate, an officer has to pass order, and you go on.
Hmm.
There is
Hmm.
sense in litigating larger matters. But,
Hmm.
if you even see the cost benefit, how much will the income tax department or the GST department collect out of some of these litigations, so you'd be shocked. So there needs a complete rethink on the litigation policy and the approach by the government.
Right.
There are times when various courts have actually directed the government to come out with a litigation policy for tax. I
Hmm.
think that's another thing that they need to do. They have put out a charter for tax, but they similarly need to come out with a litigation policy in my view.
So, like you mentioned, even you are saying, and it's all over the news, that there will be some relief in the taxation, also in the personal tax. On one hand, like you're suggesting, the tax base should increase. This debate over, that if you want to increase tax, then, especially this frustration among the middle class is that if you want to increase tax, provide us with a better infrastructure, better road, better schools, and things like that, better healthcare facilities. So how do you see this debate coming? Because I think with the inflation, with houses being unaffordable and things like that, the frustration is real. But so how do you see this debate?
So, leaving aside a technical answer, because a very technical answer I would have said is you can't link services that you have to get, etc., because they're not linked. You don't pay taxes to get something, you pay taxes as a statute. Oh, leave that out for a minute. Yes, the frustration is real. The question asked often is, why do I pay taxes if I'm getting what I'm getting? You also hear other comments such as taxes are like first world countries, and the infra we get is third world and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there is some truth in that, which is because it's a lot of it is the way you feel about it. I
Hmm.
think the problem that we have is not about high tax in terms of rate of tax. If you look around, 30 odd percent that we pay is largely the tax rate, higher tax rate in
Hmm.
most other countries. What
Hmm.
is our problem is the tax base. So when I said we need to be looking at increasing the tax base, it's not about the rate, it's not about the collection.
Hmm.
Today, hardly a low single digit percentage of our population pays income tax. And I'm only on income tax, not on GST. You take US, 60% of the US households end up paying income tax.
Hmm.
Now, there is 60 and West, 2 or 3% that we are paying. I think that base has to increase.
Hmm.
So, would you rather have, out of 100 people in the room, 3 people paying tax at 30%? Or if that 3 becomes 60 people who end up paying tax,
Hmm.
then your ability to reduce the tax rate increases because your tax collections as a number go up even if your rate is low. I
Hmm.
think the problem we have today is on the base as to how do you get more people into the tax net.
Hmm.
On that, over the last few years in particular, I think good amount of work has been done. If you see the number of people paying tax, filing returns has gone up.
Hmm.
The government has been effectively using TDS as a tool to collect data of transactions that happen.
Hmm.
A lot lesser transactions are today happening in cash. That's been
Yeah.
discouraged. Uh, so I think that's the way to go. Today, if you just look around, one way is to say that how much are the salaried people paying and how much taxes are they paying. But you speak to any of your friends, relatives who are paying taxes as salary, they always come back to say the people in business never pay tax. They manage and they end up paying lesser. They show expenses and whatever.
This and agriculture sector.
So agriculture is a completely different debate, and I'll leave
Yeah.
that out for a minute. Is today, if a person is earning 30 lakh rupees of salary,
Yeah.
how much tax does he or she pay? It's quite high, actually.
Hmm.
But the same if a 30 lakh rupees somebody is earning his business, of course, after
Hmm.
expenses, etc., even if you take profit, if somebody is making a lakh or 2 lakh profit a month, are they really getting into the tax net? Are they paying taxes? Are the
Right.
small businesses, small traders, or even freelancing professionals,
Hmm.
doctors?
Yeah.
There is a large chunk of people who are technically in the tax net, but who are not today really complying. I think that
Hmm.
compliance rate going up, the tax base increasing is really the first thing that needs to be done. Yes, there's some work that's been done in the last few years, but there's a lot more to be done there. We need to really catch and narrow that gap.
Hmm.
Because what also happens is the moment income tax collections are low and your
Hmm.
base is low,
Hmm.
then your desire and the need to collect more from indirect taxes remains. Because indirect taxes, GST is very easy to collect and administer because you and I go buy in a supermarket, whether you and I are taxable or not taxable, we
Yeah.
are offering, not offering, the businesses collect taxes and
Yes.
they deposit the GST. So GST collection will be high if our income tax collections are lower. And so
Hmm.
today, the percentage of GST contribution in total taxes is quite high. I personally think that has to come down. By coming
Hmm.
down, not because GST has to reduce,
Hmm.
but really because the base has to widen. And
Right.
once the base widens and you start collecting more from income tax, then your ability to reduce GST
Hmm.
and all the things that we keep asking about, on essentials, on health insurance, etc.
Yes.
Why is
Yes.
it 18%? That's where the answer lies. I think
Interesting.
today,
Yeah.
where we are, can we do away with GST, reduce the taxes? I don't think we can,
Hmm.
because that's where our collections is, because the
Yeah.
Otherwise, the compliance in income tax is very low.
Right, right. Also, there was this news recently which said that net direct collection for financial year 2024-2025
Right.
were expected to, exceed the budget estimates by 73,000 to 83,000 crores. So, how come there is a such a big difference in what they estimated, like 70 to 80,000 crores? So do we have a better way of estimating this? And because this amount would equally, like, it would amount equally to one or more PLI schemes, right? So it's a huge difference.
No, I think that will be, the difference between what is budgeted, what you collect
Hmm.
is something which can change both ways. It can go down or go up because your budget estimates are based on certain assumptions.
Hmm.
Your corporate tax collections are a function of the profits that companies make, etc. There's only an educated guess and a estimate that you can do at the beginning of the year to say that overall growth is expected to be so much. Therefore, this is where I'll budget my income tax collections to be. Now, it can change for two, three reasons.
Hmm.
One, general, economic situation, commercial situations, profit being higher, taxes going. Uh, Second could be a stricter administration, more compliance. Therefore, your estimates are. Third could be, because there's litigation that happens.
Hmm.
And please remember, the government always accounts for tax collection on cash basis. So you may be litigating for 5, 10 years, but if your litigation settles in this year and you make the payment this year, it gets accounted of the current year taxes. Refunds similarly go out of current year taxes. They may, uh, you know, relate to whichever period. There's also a, Vivad Se Vishwas scheme that is running where you can go and settle your disputes.
Hmm.
So the change in tax collections could be for a variety of reasons. And I really don't think it's about, there being a more scientific basis to project, etc., because these are not like company guidances, or these are not budgets that smaller companies prepare for it to be accurate. There are some assumptions taken, and there's going to be a change. Really, what helps is the government then updating itself to say that there are collections changing, and therefore there are different things that they can do. That is something that the government does. They clearly know how much they are ahead of the budget and what can be done, and if there's a
Hmm.
allocation that has been done during the budget,
Right.
how that changes, etc.
So, Ajay ji, coming to the markets now, what are your reading for the markets? So, we are constantly, like every year, we are seeing the news that more IPOs are coming up. But is the Indian market going to be like stable, or it will be little fluctuating, or is it? Are you seeing that? I mean, would you say that it's going to grow now that even Trump's in markets are
I
going crazy again?
I really wish I had the ability to predict the markets. Then I
No,
didn't have
just
to
a
really.
broader
Yeah,
general
yeah. So
trend.
on a overall thing, I don't think you can have a stable market when there are as many things that are happening around us, Trump included. Then you have whatever is happening in EU, UK, going on, China, etc. So,
Yeah.
and also domestically for us, there are multiple things.
Hmm.
So I really don't see a situation where something is going to be very stable, or something is going to be a situation that you will have X percentage return this year and things like that. I think we'll have to just overall, uh, is it positive? Yes, because we are much better placed than ever before in terms of forex, in terms of our tax collections buoyancy. Yes, there is some bit of concern on the consumption and demand side. I think if that is addressed in the budget, I think it's overall positive. Would we not have some choppiness, and would it be stable? I don't think so. I don't think we'll have a stable market.
Mhm.
But I think I'll be personally surprised if we don't really end the year on a positive note. Now, what percentage, how much, etc., is not something. I'm not an expert in that. But just directionally, I think things are quite positive.
Right. And so, what's your take on the idea of introducing 100% foreign direct investment in the insurance sector? And how do you see especially when it comes to health insurance, how do you see the state-owned general insurance companies performing?
So, sort of not an expert on the sector, but I think insurance or any sector for that matter, other than what is strategically important, defense, etc., eventually we will have to open up, and competition will have to come in, and we will have to have FDI, because That's really what one thing that's done to a lot of sectors that we opened up is it's gotten better. It's
Hmm.
also forced the Indian companies, whether it's the PSUs or otherwise, to get better. The moment you get in global competition, open it up, there are best practices that come in. Not for a minute saying that we are not good otherwise, but
Hmm.
there will be things to learn. There will be more competition that there is, the better the businesses get. So even for state-owned insurance companies, I think today they are working in a particular manner that it's going on. And uh, thankfully, in some other context, I was saying this to somebody else,
Hmm.
that one other good thing personally that I think the government has done is
Hmm.
to reduce this whole thing of dictating where if you invest, you will get a tax benefit. So,
Right.
a few years back and a generation or so back, everybody had 8 or 10 LIC policies because it
Yeah.
made sense to go
Hmm.
and invest and get a tax benefit.
Yeah.
Now that that is gone, you really decide where you have to invest. Why should
Yeah.
the government be dictating and driving where you should be investing? Uh, so that has also made some of these, state-owned insurance companies now really listen to the market, come out with policies which are much better, good, etc. I think that will increase even more. I personally have always been in favor of opening most things up for foreign investment, other than those, like I said, which are very important either for national security, defense, strategic regions, etc.
Right, right. And this is like it was my question. Like I wanted to understand that what is the ideal, market cap to GDP ratio for a country and also for India, because the difference between China and US is quite huge, right? China is at 57.5% and US is approximately around 200%, and India stands at 147.5%. So like what does this ratio like what would be the ideal ratio, and what's best like especially for India?
I really don't think there is anything like our ideal ratio and where we have to be. Again, both are very large indicators and too many factors influencing both. If you look at them as a numerator and denominator, both can be influenced by a variety of factors. I really don't think there's an ideal ratio that we could be looking at. Even for taxes, whether you're looking at tax, GDP, etc., I think we have a scope to increase, and those are completely different metrics. They are not comparable. But the point I'm driving is that I don't think we can ape any other country. We have our own issues. We have our own way of functioning. We have a population and poverty at levels which others don't. Therefore, I
Hmm.
don't think we can import some of these metrics and to say that this is where we should be working towards. I think we need to figure out what works for us. I really don't see either market cap to GDP or any of those ratios having an ideal number where we need to be. A- And even if you do, how will you ever get there? Because you can't control the market. You
Right.
can't control the market valuation and where that will be.
Hmm. Interesting. So again, uh, almost coming to an end, but again, if we see RBI and
Yes.
NSO and whether it's World Bank, IMF, again they have given the growth rate in the range of 6. So how do you see, what do you think are the main factors and why we are not growing at say 8 or reaching to that?
I think there, my view from where I see it is only because of manufacturing. I think we need to see how um, we can look at doing more on manufacturing. I think a lot of our, even our exports and what we do, a lot of it is really more services. We still dependent on imports for a lot of manufacturing that happens. And there's also an opportunity for us to look at manufacturing. See what the PLI has done
Hmm.
in some of the sectors last few years. I think doing more there helps on two things. One, maybe overall growth changes, and second, it addresses employment issue like nothing else does.
Yeah.
Because a large factory and the number of people it can employ and the time taken for the workforce to be trained to be ready for a manufacturing setup to a services is very different.
Hmm.
Today, even if you want to create a software services company, ITS, whatever it may be, for 1 lakh people, you can't create that in 6 months because you need to train people.
Yes.
It takes a lead time. Whereas 1 lakh uh, job creation and manufacturing to skill people will not take as long as it takes.
Mm.
Therefore, manufacturing is something that will help us both on better growth rates, growing faster than what we are growing today, and also address the employment problem.
Right. Lastly, Ajay ji, the aim is to reach 10 trillion economy, right? And we haven't reached 5 trillion yet. So again, one is manufacturing, as you said, but what would be one key change or what in the budget or in general, uh, along with, say, manufacturing, that will help us achieve this?
I think this is sort of uh, I would say not a very well liked answer possibly. I think one of the things that we really need to change is look at administrative reforms. Look at how our government administration, the services, function. Because a lot of what we today do on policy has to be eventually reflected in how, that the government at the lowest level, which is all the officers, behave with businesses. You can
Yeah.
have whatever on ease of business ranking, etc. But unless there's a change in how the bureaucrats and the government behaves with businesses, I
Yeah.
think that's one place where we can do a lot of things. And
Yes.
my comment is coming from looking at taxes,
Hmm.
looking at meeting businesses, which today still have problems getting approvals, time that is taken.
Yeah.
Dealing with the government by itself is always a complaint that comes up. I think once that is addressed, then you are actually setting up a conducive environment for entrepreneurs, business growth, newer companies, small and medium enterprises to grow, and things like that. I
Yeah.
think that's one piece which really is a huge differentiator. If we want to grow fast, whether it's 10 trillion, 5, 15, whatever the number could be,
Yes.
I'm not so fast on numbers, whether it's 6% and greater than that, somewhere both are the same answers.
Hmm.
If you were to ask me what one single factor can the government focus on, is really not on policy announcements, etc., but on implementation.
Right.
How can that be changed today? How do you uh, the true in
Yeah.
spirit ease of business? How do you bring that in?
Absolutely. Even if we have to look at it like politically also, the top leadership in the NDA government or the BJP government, they don't get this allegation of, they seem to be very proactive. They seem to
Uh,
be free of any corruption and all. No, such comments are made on them. But like you said, the ground level and the administrative part is where, the delays and
yes.
all that is happening. All right. Before we wrap this up, any final comments, Ajay ji,
No,
you
I
would like
think
to make?
we just wait, look forward to the
Yeah,
budget. The
we'll
only
get
thing
back to you post
I
budget also.
I always keep telling is on Twitter or on social media or in a social function gathering that you meet. The only way a budget can be good is if taxes are reduced. We should stop looking at it that way.
Yeah,
See if the budget is good overall, from sorting out a lot of issues, making things easy for us overall, and tax being one part of what is there.
yeah.
But yes, the general overwhelming feeling at this point is that we are all highly taxed for what we get.
But
Hopefully,
Ajay
some bit
ji,
of change.
don't you think that no matter what is the tax level, this feeling is constant every
There
year,
will always be. There will always
whatever may be the case? I mean,
which
it's. I think we can scrap old newspapers
Yeah.
and still
No, it
the
will
new.
always be the case, which is one reason why I would never want the finance minister's job, because you can never please everybody once you finish the budget.
Yeah. And especially taxes, they are like the highlight of the show. Right. All right. Thank you so much, Ajay ji, for joining us and for all your time. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you're listening to this episode on Spotify, do follow and rate the show. I'm your host, Diksha, signing off. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.